Hello, everyone, and welcome to this spotlight episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. I'm joined today by Lien Duffield, and I actually met Lien at the Rose Farm with Denise Duffield-Thomas in December last year, and we had some conversations about exiting businesses. And
I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast.
As someone who has a personal brand and a few products that could potentially be sold off in my business, I had never particularly thought about preparing my business for exit early. I always thought I'd just cross that bridge when it comes to it. But Lien and I had some amazing conversations, and I had to invite her onto the podcast because I think a lot of us assume that we're going to be running our business forever and we're never going to want to leave it. And there are some things that we can do that, even if that's the case, we're building the foundations of our business and really getting it solid. So welcome so much to this podcast, Lien. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Tash. What a lovely introduction. Yeah, it feels like kind of ages ago and yesterday that we met on the Rose Farm, which was absolutely just a beautiful experience. And I remember our conversations like very, very vividly. And I think what you just remembered as well is one of the things that I came about too as an entrepreneur, where you start a business and you're really excited about the thing that you want to bring into the world and the people that you want to help. And exiting your company or selling your company is like, that never crossed my mind for the first 10 years when I was being an entrepreneur. And I think for most people, entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs specifically, this is a conversation that we hardly have amongst each other, right? I was just delivering a masterclass earlier today, and I mentioned like the conversations that we were having about this topic amongst women entrepreneurs. It's such uncharted territory. It's so new to us as women, new to us as entrepreneurs, new to us as women in the online space. It's such a new sector as well, like such new evolution that has happened in the entrepreneurial space. So for us today, even to have this conversation and to talk about this in your podcast thank you so much for this opportunity, because I hope it will help a lot of women entrepreneurs to even maybe not think about selling their company just yet, but maybe planting that little seed of thought in their head that maybe one day they might want to sell their company.
So good, so good. And your business, your previous business, it's a fascinating story for me as well. So do you want to just explain to people a little bit about your business and what prompted you to want to exit and how this now has come about?
Yeah, so I actually have had a couple of businesses because I've been in business since like 2010, I think. Yes, I am that old. So I had a couple of businesses. So I'm not really sure which one you are referring to particularly.
The surf one.
Which one?
The surf one.
Okay. Is that the one where like I used to have I've been running businesses from a place of just feeling a need and feeling a desire and having a passion and always thinking like, if this is a problem for me, probably other people will have this problem too. So I might as well just try and solve it. Yeah. So I happened to do that with a business where I was like just having like a paid blog for many, many years, where it gave me the opportunity to learn to surf. I moved to another country because of that. There were just so many things that I think just starting a business, building a business, scaling a business creates just so many just opportunities for us to live the life of our dreams, really.
And so your previous business, to me, it felt like it was quite a personal business, right? And it wouldn't be the type of business that you could sell, but it actually is. So can you talk about like how on earth do you sell something when you've built it around yourself?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's probably the question that I get asked most of the time, specifically from women entrepreneurs, because a lot of us have built personal brands. So here's the thing. I'm going to be straight up talking to you. Selling a personal brand is really, really tough because a buyer wants to buy a business. They don't want to buy your job.
Yes.
That's a very, very different thing. And so personal brands potentially can just be a job. What do I mean by that? When people talk to me about I have a personal brand, I start asking them what exactly it is that they do in their company. And it's not just that they do the marketing, which to me is a personal brand. You do the marketing. The marketing is a person, right? So that's one thing. But often also these businesses, the business owner, who is also the brand, also does a lot of other stuff in the business. They do the product delivery. They run the retreats. They record the courses. They do the podcast. They do all sorts of, so they do the delivery of the service that is being sold. That makes it even more complicated to sell, because what if you are no longer there in the company? Who's going to deliver the services or the products? So that becomes an obstacle. Another thing that I see with a lot of women entrepreneurs is they not only do the marketing and the product delivery, they are also the R&D department of the company. So they capture all the ideas from their audiences and they build new products or new services. Specifically, if you're a creator, you're a manifesting generator, you have these kinds of profiles, you love creating new things. And it's probably also the lifeline of your company. You might sell new things to the same kinds of clients, for example. But what's going to happen when a business buys your company? Who's going to do the product development or be in charge of the research and development, the R&D department, right? So often a personal brand comes with more challenges than just the marketing being a personal brand, right? So you have to sort these two things out first. Make sure someone else can do the delivery and make sure someone else can do the development of new products. And then we still have the personal marketing brand. And here's the challenge with that. And then I'm going to stop talking about challenges and we should talk about opportunities more, because it's a really exciting topic. And I don't want to throw 700 hurdles on the road. But the thing is, when you're a personal marketing brand, often when a business buys your company, they will want you to stay on board for a while. And a while might be 6 months, but more likely it might be a couple of years. Why? Because this business will want to convert your personal brand business into a company brand business, right? And they're not going to buy your business if you're not going to stick with it for a little while to help them transition. And for a buyer, it's a tricky thing to do. So what I always advise my clients to do is, when they have personal brands, to make and implement a plan to start transitioning into a more corporate brand after a while. So that's, and now I'm going to stop talking about obstacles. But those are the obstacles with personal brands. It can be done. And I have done it myself multiple times, and I have advised clients to do it as well. So it can be done. It's tricky and it's a slippery slope, and you really need to know what you're doing. But you can do it. It's possible. I've done it. I've seen clients do it. And I'm starting to see some really interesting case studies in the marketplace of bigger names that are personal brands that are starting to do that. So that makes me wonder that they're probably going to sell their company in probably 2 or 3 years' time.
You can see that maybe there's a little transition happening. And I think that that's the thing that I loved about all of our conversations, and why I wanted you on this podcast is because I think a lot of people will just assume it's not possible at all because of those obstacles. But if instead we look at those obstacles as almost markers of how we would need to be prepared, then all of a sudden it is possible. It's just that we need to ensure that we hit those things. So I'd love to know from you, Lien, even if it's not a personal brand, if it's a business that's now sellable, right? It's something that someone can pick it up and take it and run with it. What are some of the things that buyers look for that we could be aware of to make our business look more appealing to potential buyers?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I call dressing your business for success. Just
it.
like you dress your house for success if you want to sell it, right? So you want to make sure that it doesn't have you all over the place. So you have all your clutter out of the house and it's not full of family pictures and it doesn't have all of these things, right? So you want to take the you a little bit out of that business. But basically, there are several strategies. We call them the 4 exit habits that we advise people to cultivate, because with those habits, they will be able to sell their business for more money. By the way, any business can be sold, even if it's a personal brand, even if it's small, even if it's whatever you're thinking of the reasons why it could not be sold, any business can be sold. The question is, for how much money and how long will it take? Right? So if you're like, I have time to sell, which is great, that's the best place to be. If you've got time, you can get yourself ready for it. That's one thing. And second is, what do I need to do in order to dress it for success? And obviously that personal brand switch is one of the things that are key in that process. Other things are, we call them the 4 exit habits. They are external habits, which are things that show your company to the outside world. So for example, switching from a personal brand to a company brand is one of the things. We also have expansion habits. They have got to do with the growth potential of your company. So a buyer will be interested in what you do today, but also how it could be expanded. For example, I have a business school that I own here in Belgium. It used to be only for female freelancers. And when I was speaking to investors and buyers, one of the things that they asked me obviously was, can this be run for male entrepreneurs as well? Can male freelancers go through this school as well? And it doesn't mean that I need to attract that particular audience. It just shows for them there's growth potential there, because I'm leaving half of the market, actually 2/3 of the market outside of my scope right now. So that's expansion habits. The other one is what we call internal habits. So this is how you organize your business internally. This is your team structure, your procedures, like just anything that you do on the inside of your company that will make it more valuable from a buyer. As I said before, a buyer doesn't want to buy a job, they want to buy a business. So you need to make sure you're not what we call not the single point of contact in your business. So if you are the one making most of the decisions, there might be just day-to-day operational decisions, but even hiring decisions, financial decisions, who to work with, who to fire, launching decisions, marketing decisions, pricing decisions, all these kinds of decisions. If they are done by you, who's going to do it when you are no longer there because your company has been bought? Right? So these are what we call internal habits. And then the last one are the tangible habits. Tangible habits got everything to do with the numbers that are related to your business. And obviously, when we talk about selling a business, we talk about how much money does it make? How profitable is it? How big is it? How does the cash flow look like? So these are things that you can work on as well in order for you to increase the value of your business. And obviously, a buyer will look at how big is this business? There's a lot of buyers that don't want to be buying businesses under $1.5 million, $2 million in revenue on a yearly basis. And the main reason for that is because they think it's still too small and it still depends too much on the owner. So size really matters in that sense. Also, how profitable your business is. The more money you make at the end of the year, the more quicker a buyer will get their money back from their investment. So the more profitable it is, the more attractive it's going to be for a potential buyer. So we have identified basically 11 different strategies, or maybe strategies is too much of a word, but 11 different things that you can work on over the course of often it's a couple of years that will really boost the value of your business. And for a lot of our clients that implement these things, after a while, they're like, I'm not really sure if I want to sell this company because I love it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's not so much a burden on my shoulder anymore, or we're starting to make so much more profit after just a couple of years of being like more in a challenging environment or whatever. So it might be that they fall head over the heels in love again with their business, which is the best place to be in, because if you don't want to sell, then that's the best place actually to be in for someone who's really interested in buying your company.
Yeah. And that was actually what I was going to say and ask about next, because it sounds to me like the things that you need to do in order to get your business ready to sell are also the things that make your business more appealing for you to run, because
Totally.
you're not having to make so many decisions. Everything doesn't rely on you anymore. It's bringing in lots of cash. It's profitable, right? So all of those things make the business almost far more enjoyable for you as an owner.
Totally.
And this was a conversation that we'd had at the Rosemont. I was like, oh my goodness, like I have no intention of selling my business, but I have every intention of making my business as easy and as effective for me to be running as possible. And so even though I might not plan to sell my business into the future, by preparing it for sale and looking at these different factors, I'm actually making it a far easier business to run, a far more effective business, a far more profitable business. And so why wouldn't I want to go through that process and look for those ways that I can do that? Yeah, it's so amazing. And do you see that happen? Like people end up deciding to keep their business because they've made it so profitable?
I haven't seen that yet, though I think like it's a really nice side effect, but there are more reasons for people to want to sell their business than it just being easy.
Yeah.
Right? Because easy doesn't mean you don't have to pay attention to it anymore.
Yeah.
And for some people, it just feels like a chapter that is ready to be closed. Maybe because they want to create another masterpiece, for example, and they're like, I need to create space for that. And it's just wise to sell this business that I already have, although it is really amazing. But I need to create space, even if it's just mental space. Maybe it's not space in your diary or any of these things, but just mental space. And also people also want to, I mean, these are not the nicest of circumstances, but sometimes, we get sick or something happens in our family. We are going through a divorce. We might have to relocate, which for an online business is not that much of an issue, but for like a brick and mortar business, that is. So there's a lot of reasons, very valid reasons why business owners want to sell their company. And the best place to be in, I always say, is the time where you don't want and need to sell. That's the best time actually to start selling or thinking about selling your company, because you will get the most money out of your company and basically use that for the next masterpiece that you are going to create, or just to retire or pay off your mortgage or buy a second, a third, or a fourth property, or whatever it is that you want to do with that kind of big final paycheck, right? So so people do still want to sell, although their businesses have turned over into an amazing business, because there's other reasons why you would want to sell a company. Yeah.
Fabulous. And so what would be your advice to someone who is in that space where they don't want to sell, they don't necessarily need to sell? How do they get started on just preparing for this and looking at those foundations that could be improved?
Yeah, there's a bit of knowledge out there. There's not that much knowledge out there, remarkably, though, which is really interesting. So what I see a lot of people do is when they're thinking about selling, they might engage with like a merger and acquisitions expert, and they'll tell them like your business is worth this much, and then they'll go through that process. And when they go through that selling process, often the M&A expert would say like, here are like some loose ends in your company, and that's why instead of selling it for 2 million, we'll only be able to sell it to like 1.6 or something like that. So what I'm trying to do is get people to think more ahead of time
Yeah.
and really like close all these gaps, right? And so you can implement those 4 exit habits, start playing with them. So making that transition, for example, from personal brand to company brand, that's one of the things. Really thinking about your revenue structure. And one of the biggest advices that I can give, if you don't have a recurring revenue stream yet in your company, that's a really good way to start increasing the value of your business, because recurring revenue gets, a lot of people talk about scaling your business to millions or multiple millions or 7-figure, multiple 7 figures, et cetera, which is great. I mean, size does matter when you want to sell a company, but not all revenue is valued equally.
Yeah.
From a buyer's perspective. So if you don't have, for example, a recurring revenue stream, I advise you to start building one and have it for multiple years, because the track record of that recurring revenue stream will be of incredible value as soon as you start thinking of selling your business. So if I would have to say like 2 things to work on, then these would be the 2. But in total, we have 11 different strategies in our 4 exit habits to be working on. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I understand you have a quiz that people can do if they are considering this and they want to see their readiness to exit. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've made a quiz, which is like a 5-minute assessment. And the quiz is all about, is your business ready to sell? And you'll fill out a questionnaire. It's a quick assessment. Basically, the questions are based on our 4 exit habits framework that I've mentioned before. And after you do the quiz, you will get your what we call a big exit score, which is the score that indicates how sellable your business is already at the moment. And then you will get like 3-4 actionable tips that you can already start using and implementing in your business by yourself. You don't have to hire expensive coaches to do that. If you want to do that, you could do that. But there's a lot of things that you could do just by yourself to start on that journey. And if you feel like you need more expert on advice, then feel free, we can have a chat about it. But there's definitely common sense things that after you do the quiz, you get some actionable tips and you can start implementing them straight away.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now, one of the things that you raised was that, and also we'll have that link to the show in the show notes, everyone. So we'll make sure that we've got the link there for you to go and do the quiz. But one of the things that you mentioned, Lien, was that it's talking about exiting our businesses is something that we're not necessarily talking about. Why do you think it feels like such a secret little topic? Like, why do we not talk about, in building a business, what is the final plan of where this business is going and whether you're going to sell it or not?
Yeah, I think one part of it, it's still a learning curve that we as women entrepreneurs in general need to go through. So we have always been lagging when it comes down to starting a business, scaling a business, growing a business. And with lagging, I don't mean like we didn't have the skills or the ambition or any of these things. We were just not allowed to be entering that space for a very, very long time. So we are now just probably the 2nd generation that really has been able to move into the space of becoming entrepreneurs as women, right? So we're definitely the 1st generation also to break a couple of revenue glass ceilings amongst women entrepreneurs as well. Back in the days, and we're only talking 1 generation ago, it was really uncommon for women to build businesses that would go over $1 million in revenue, for example, even $500,000. The businesses were smaller, so we didn't need to have that conversation because we didn't have businesses that were interested from a buyer's perspective to be bought, right? But now we're in a different era. So now we have gone through that learning process. We are with way more women entrepreneurs. We are, and I can say this, and all the research shows this, we are way more successful. We are way more smarter in terms of how we use our money that we have in our companies, how we invest that money. We're more strategic about certain things that we are doing. So we really have gone through a very steep learning curve over the last probably 20 years. And I think now we're reaching that tipping point where we are ready to have that conversation, because we get into more and more businesses that could be interested for other buyers to buy them, or for businesses to buy our companies. And I think 20 years ago, there wasn't that much of a track record yet. So I think that is the reason why I see amongst men entrepreneurs that is a way more common conversation to have, specifically with the boom of like the whole scale up hype that we have seen in the last 15 years, where businesses are being built to be sold with that particular purpose, which is something I think for a lot of women is also very uncommon. We don't build businesses to sell. We build them because we want to serve. And we want to help and make millions along the way and have a really good time, right? So I think just the times have changed, and I feel really blessed to be one of the voices to be leading this conversation amongst women entrepreneurs, not only amongst women entrepreneurs, also in other rooms, but definitely amongst women entrepreneurs, because I do believe that the time is now. And there are a lot of amazing women entrepreneurs right now that can start selling their companies, become heart-centered investors, not just heart-centered entrepreneurs, but heart-centered investors, put more of their resources where their mouth is and where their money is. And I think that will just bring a lot of really good stuff in the next 50 years to come. So I'm really excited about this new chapter that we're all going into.
That is so powerful. And I mean, we could have another hour's conversation about investing as well, right? Because
totally.
that is another layer to exiting your business and having that now capital behind you to be able to then influence dozens of businesses at once with all of your business savvy and the skills that you've built through that process of creating your own company. Now, all of a sudden, you can help other people grow their companies and be mindful about where you're investing your time and energy and where you're investing your money as well. So
yes,
we'll talk about that on a future podcast episode, I am sure, because
count me in.
It gets me very excited, and it's part of my vision for my future in my business. It wasn't necessarily that I would exit my business in order to do that, but that my business was creating so much cash that I would have the capacity to, become an investor and be a very mindful investor as well. So that definitely makes my heart sing, and I get very excited about thinking about, even just we see venture capital goes to less than 10% of women, 10% of venture capital goes to 2%. And, how many women investors do we see at that sort of VC level as well? So you're changing the world. You are changing the world for the better. And that gets me very excited. Now, one of the things that we do in the Heart Centered Business podcast, Lien, is at the end of each episode, I ask you, if I was to quote you on something, what is it that you would want me to say?
Oof. I have so many quotes that I use in all kinds of circumstances, and I think people know me for that. And it's not always like I can just, I have a lot of them. But one of the things one that really popped into my mind, and I think it links really beautifully into the conversation of building a business that is an asset and maybe selling it off and being like a mindful, heart-centered investor. Is one like the one that really popped into my mind straight away was like, the world is your oyster.
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much. Ooh.
Which got nothing to do with selling your business or being an investor, but it really just, the world is your oyster. And I really believe that we can do and be anything that we want to be. And we have still a huge journey in front of us. And I'm being very thankful and grateful for the journey of the women that were before us. And I'm so excited for you, for me, for all the women that we know, your listeners in the podcast as well, to really pave the way for so many that are going to follow us. So just remember, the world is your oyster.
That is so wonderful. What a powerful note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lien. This has been amazing. Everyone, make sure you come and check out those show notes for today's episode. We'll link to Lien so you can follow her and see what it is that she's sharing as well, because she's a font of amazing information, as well as link to that quiz so you can get started on looking at where maybe you could be making some changes just in case you ever decide that you want to sell your business. So thank you once again, Lien. Thank you everyone for joining us. And until next time, we cannot wait to see you shine.
Thanks, Tash. Thanks for having me.
Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.